What's up, everybody? This is Adit. Welcome back to No Vacuum, and I am here today to talk about the album that many of us haven't been able to stop talking about in the past week. It's actually one of the first albums of 2021 to have that effect on all of us, aside from maybe Taylor's version, which you can, see my thoughts on wherever that I put the video. But anyways, we're talking about Olivia Rodrigo and her debut, Sour. I do really enjoy these blockbuster releases because they turn out to be the only times in the year where my friends who don't actually watch these videos want to talk to me about music. And if this is your first No Vacuum video, let me know. And if you're my friend and this is your first No Vacuum video, then whatever. Teen pop stars have been an essential piece of pop music for my entire lifetime and probably before my lifetime, but I think what's relevant here is the years in which I have been living, because Rodrigo has been seen as this Gen Z icon, a generation that I'm on the cusp of, so I feel qualified to talk about what happened in my lifetime. And the way things started out with teen pop stars is that they have typically been built for clinical mass appeal. They have been, for better or for worse, constructed for mainstream ears. In the late 90s and early 2000s, teen pop stars, whether they're of the Disney band with Miley, Cyrus, and Hilary, Duff, or in the major label sphere like Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera, aspired to just create straight up pop songs. They weren't trying to move the needle in any specific way. They were just trying to mirror the trends of the moment and make pop songs that aligned with it. In the early 2010s, you had a growing appetite for teen pop that was a bit more complex and mirrored the generational desire for music that pushed the needle creatively and thematically. You really see this come alive in Lorde's Pure Heroine and Melodrama, but Billie Eilish is also a good example of this artist, someone whose sound is as dense and innovative as the lyrical themes that they're talking about. Rodrigo seems to combine the best of both worlds here in creating a sound that is conventionally poppy and with a very precise mainstream appeal, while also understanding that that mainstream appeal also is a bit subversive. I think where Rodrigo stands out is that she represents a return to what we saw in the early 2000s, where pop stars, especially teen pop stars, were really looking to execute as well as possible. There is some room for innovation, and Rodrigo takes advantage of that on Sour, but the main goal is to perform pop songs that sound exciting and sound fresh, but are also latching on to trends that have been brewing for many years at this point. Lorde and Billie Eilish, being the stars of the teen pop world, were really praised for the fact that they are creating new soundscapes for pop. In Rodrigo's case, she is translating their music into something that is resoundingly mainstream, but also acknowledges that Lorde and Billie Eilish are the mainstream and the style of music they put together is what teens are interested in. And that is informed by other styles, including Taylor Swift, bedroom pop, even pop punk to a certain degree. But Rodrigo's goal is to kind of be the focal point of all these different movements and to project that into something that is based off execution rather than any sort of raw innovation that she's bringing to the table. One of the things that folks expected from Sour and Rodrigo manages to execute on really well is her ability to tell stories. I think that the record really feels like one of those coming-of-age movies you might see at Sundance, think like The Spectacular Now or something like that. I think it does a really good job of telling the teen's story in a very legitimate way that feels incredibly authentic and is incredibly confessional in a lot of ways, both through the type of music that she's putting out in the first place, but also through a lot of the lyrics. I mean, she's talking very intimately about experiences like prom, getting your driver's license, as we all know, and driving around any town USA. Really tenets of the American teen experience, especially the American suburban teen experience. The first two tracks see Rodrigo really leading into the 1-2 punch of being a generational icon, but also the queen of your next breakup. I think Brutal is a great way to start the record, a pop punk romp that feels like a throwback to what pop punk was all about, complaining about your teen years and that there's not that much fulfillment to be had in being an adolescent, wishing that you had that teenage dream. And I think that is a way to kick off the record. It's sort of this thesis statement that Rodrigo sees herself as a bit of that icon, as a bit of a leader for this new generation of teenagers who are latching onto her music. Rodrigo uses the last few seconds of Brutal to slow things down a little bit for transitioning into Traitor, which is the ultimate anthem about the girl he told you not to worry about. And Traitor feels a lot more akin to what you see on the rest of the record. It's a little more embellished with some of its orchestration and some of its strings, but overall, the song is emotionally confessional and talks about raw feelings, about not feeling cheated on, but feeling as if someone you cared about was a traitor and that relationship has gone sour, no pun intended. And I think that 1-2 punch, plus the lead single of Driver's License, sends the record off to a good start, especially on the storytelling front and showing Rodrigo's range to a good extent, both having the pop punk romp, but also having the normal piano ballad and the epic piano ballad back to back to back. Yes, on a song like Brutal, you see Rodrigo trying to take the mantle of a generational icon, as she probably rightfully should at this point given the runaway success that many predicted Sour would have, but the rest of the record really focuses on Rodrigo bringing her confessions to the table. It reads a lot like a diary with a lot of intimate storytelling that really excels well. I think that Rodrigo, as I said, is a skilled storyteller, and it feels very similar to what we've seen from someone like Taylor Swift in reflecting on personal experiences, more in the vein of the early 2000s pop star talking about teenage stuff rather than the 2010s teen pop star who's a bit more focused on the loftier considerations of what adolescence and youth have to offer. All that being said, I think that one of my first major grips of the record comes in its sequencing. I think that having the lead singles that show off Rodrigo's greatest range, from an epic piano ballad like Driver's License to the psychedelic pop of Deja Vu and then the pop punk of Good For You, having those all on the first half of the record really have it pack a punch. I think that sandwiching some of the peaks with some of the troughs on the record so early on really hurts the back half of the record, which feels a lot flatter by comparison. And I think it ultimately lends itself to one of my bigger issues with the record in that it seems to lack dynamics. It seems to lack highs and lows to play off of each other, both because of the way it was sequenced, but also just the disposition of it all. I think that Rodrigo honing in on a certain set of experiences and writing breakup songs, but also pairing that with the relatively similar execution of piano ballad and acoustic guitar song, I think I occasionally struggle to distinguish between the songs, but also I feel as if it forces me to sit in a certain mood. I don't really have intense songs with a lot of recovery time. I just have like an intense song like Good For You, and then it immediately runs into a 3-track sequence that's solely focused on sad emotional reflection rather than carrying more of a nuanced wave from those highs to those lows. When you take a record like Lorde's Melodrama, you had those really electropop innovative bops that showed off kind of the freneticness of trying to recover from a breakup, but you also had those really intense tracks like Liability that see her processing the emotions that come with our breakup. I think that Sour sort of relies on the listener deciding that they're a certain kind of sad and sticking through that for 34 minutes. Now, I don't think that every record has to be emotional or a sonic roller coaster from start to finish, but I think that Sour is a bit of a missed opportunity in how it is purely just a teen sad bedroom pop album. I think that especially in Rodrigo's case, there's a lot of opportunity from the teen pop world to write about the hyperbolic experiences with music that reflects that intensity. Yes, you have a few choice cuts with Deja Vu and Good For You showing off the highs and the intensity there, but the rest of the record seemingly takes itself really seriously in shooting for the more down-tempo, emotionally driven stuff. And that probably speaks to why the record has such a millennial appeal, why it really appeals to fans of Phoebe Bridgers and the Folklore Evermore universe. But I think that in the end, it leads to it feeling a bit flat from start to finish, knowing that the record is anchored on a certain idea, but its strongest moments, especially the singles that came out of it, aren't really rooted in those anchors to begin with, making those anchors feel a bit like a slog from start to finish. I think it's really this flatness and lack of highs and lows on Sour that I think sells it kind of short. I think it does manage to succeed as a storytelling piece and as a collection of songs, but as a whole record, it sort of just feels fine. It sort of feels like Rodrigo isn't going to change the game creatively just yet. I think that she definitely shows off that potential, and maybe that's part of the ratings inflation that we're seeing, But at this point in her career, rather than being someone like Taylor Swift or Lorde, leading commercially and critically at such a high level, I think she's more in the category of Halsey, someone who needs to grow into her own sound and grow into her own artistic inclinations. And I think that there's a path for that. I think ultimately Halsey, especially on her 2020 record Manic, showed that she can be this kind of genreless next generation pop star in taking different styles together and executing them side by side with a lot of nuance. Overall, I think Sour has 11 good songs on it that I'm perfectly willing to listen to and enjoy, but I think on the whole, the record feels a bit too top heavy and a bit too flat, leaning into a certain type of lyrical style and musical execution that feels very flat from start to finish and doesn't have the highs and lows that would make it a much more dynamic experience. Instead, we sort of get a 34-minute sad album. And while that definitely sounds like a good thing to many people, I think especially as a teen pop record talking about hyperbolic emotions, I think that we had a lot more in store in terms of execution. And we see the signs there, but on the whole, the record doesn't execute in the way that I would have expected, and it's definitely not something that I want to vouch for any more than I already have. Thank you so much for watching to the end. If you hadn't noticed, this was a bit of a different video for me. I, like many of you, heard the record for the first time on Friday, so now I'm just reflecting on it and just going off the cusp here, flamed it over a couple of days. So I hope you enjoy this new format. Let me know what you think of this style, but also what you think of my hot takes. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to this video and like it and send it to someone who you think will be really pissed off by what I have to say. I'd love to hear what they have to say. I post videos every 2 weeks on Fridays, so I'll see you in 2 weeks on Friday. If you're not watching it on a Friday, then I'll see you when I see you. Thanks so much.